Bing bong.
This is the iDanSimpson Show.
We do it because it's right.
I love the dialectic.
His testicles became swollen.
Based.
Do not come. Do not come.
I'm gonna come.
Please clap.
Who's this man? This man in the hat. I'm gonna ruin this.
You're a stupid baby down, not me.
Yes, love your face. Welcome. Hey, before we introduce the guest, please support this content on Patreon for as little as $3 a month. You'll get early access to every replay of my chill talk show for leftists, Leftist and Chill, with me, your host, iDanSimpson. Let's welcome to the show today, new champion to the stream, communist organizer, Michael Andoh. Please clap. Yeah, welcome on. I didn't hit the button. Here we go. There's the button. Joining me via audio today. How you doing today, Michael? What's up?
Man, I'm feeling good. I just got back from there's this mega church near my house where there's a homeless community that's been set up, and we've been, supplying them out for a week or two now.
Yeah.
So I just got back from seeing how they work, because they're right next to like a police station, so they have to be low key about how they move and operate. But they seem to be in good spirits right now. Just some really brave people. So I'm feeling good right now, at least. Yeah.
Good for you. Yeah. Ride that wave. Ride that high. I love starting the show with a little bit of like literal praxis. That's the beautiful thing.
You got to.
Yeah. So, Michael, we're going to get to know you a little bit today. Maybe hear about your project. We already heard a little bit about that project. We can hear more about it, of course. Anything you want to talk about, anything you want to monologue about, you're welcome to. We want to hear about maybe any organizations you might be involved with. Yeah, and just see where the chat takes us. Yeah, sounds good.
Sick.
All right, I'm
I love
excited.
that intro. That intro was crazy.
It's just a silly show. I think of this as like the back row of class. You know what I mean? I just sort of I sit back here and talk shit about everybody. You know what I mean? Yeah. And then sometimes I go up to the front of class, and then my chat, they all make fun of me. So chat, don't embarrass me today. I got a cool guest on. I want to make sure I put my best foot forward here. Okay, so let's just jump right in. You've described yourself as a communist organizer, sort of like Barack Obama, right?
Oh, absolutely. Me and him.
He's
He's a very close idol of mine. I love him. His work in Syria, his work in Libya, just beautiful stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, God, I love Obama so much.
Yeah, right. Something wild. My partner is still a little bit more lib than I am. I've shifted wildly left recently, and she's still got a picture of Obama up, and I'm like, can we do something about this? All right. Anyways, but that's about me. I want to get to know you a little bit here, Michael. Obviously, you're nothing like Obama. I get that, but real quick, let's lead off with a real quick. What's your story? Who are you? What should we know about you?
All right. I guess we can go to the beginning. I'm the son of two African immigrants. Both came from Ghana, West Africa, during the late 90s. Came and settled down in Atlanta, where I was born. And Bankhead, pretty okay neighborhood. Not great, but pretty okay. But to get more recent, how I got into politics, I have an older cousin who was an anarchist. And he would talk my head off about all this gibberish. I didn't know what he was talking about when I was 8 or 9, but I was like, he's cool. So I'm gonna keep listening to him. But he gave me a few books to read, one being the Communist Manifesto.
You were 9?
Yeah, I didn't touch it. I didn't touch it for a few years. I don't know why. I was scared. I didn't know if I was allowed to have it. I was aware of what the rest there was, and I was like, oh no, I don't want to interact with this. But I think it was, I had it in my room, and then I think it was like 8th grade civics class. I had a teacher who I love. I'm not going to name him and get him in trouble, but he could tell I already had, some opinions that were maybe anti-establishment. So he was like, hey, you should maybe check out, the works of some of these people. He didn't start off with Marx. He started out like W.E.B. Du Bois, James Baldwin, and then eventually Marx. And I was like, hey, I have this Communist Manifesto book.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Right?
There it is, the thread. You've like tied the thread together. So you've pretty much heard the same recommendation now from two different people. And when that happens to me, I'm like, fine, I'll fucking read the book. You know what I mean? That happens.
Exactly. That just happened recently with Guy Debord's The Society of Spectacle.
Okay.
I got it from multiple people, and I was like, I guess I have to sit down and work through this thing.
I don't know. I tried to read it. It was like too French or something. Oh, wait, was that Du Bois who wrote it? There's the Society of the Spectacle. That was the other guy, right? The French guy.
Guy Debord. Yeah, he's The Situation is international guy. He's like, he was a part of this like 60s French movement.
Okay.
The book is incredible, but it's just very dense, and he speaks in a way that's kind of indecipherable sometimes. So it's a little tough to parse through most of the time. But I think it's a really good dialogue on mass media and how it has affected the psyche of, normal working class people, and how we've kind of internalized some of these tropes and narratives to become real in our lives. And I think we just saw that recently with the whole Will Smith, Chris Rock situation, where there's this whole dialogue about violence off of this award show, which has no real bearing on reality, but people took it really seriously, Yeah. And
wow.
That's what that book kind of touches on.
Okay. That'd probably help me understand if I were to try to dig back into it. Do you think it might be like one of those things where like the more you read it, the more it sort of makes sense? You can start to understand the vernacular. It's like reading Clockwork Orange or something.
Oh, absolutely. Okay. Like I'm an idiot. It takes me a long time to get through any book. So like I've had to reread sections of that book 4, 5, 6 times. Like, Jesus Christ, what is he saying? But yeah, I think it's worth it if you do, put the time in and effort in to keep going through it. That's how I got through most of the first the first few books in the Marxist-Leninist study guide.
Okay.
Like what is to be done, and like socialism, utopian and scientific, anti-dairy. Like you just kind of have to sit with it. It doesn't make sense at first, but eventually when it does click, it's incredible.
Okay, so you're mentioning a couple different books, and I'm remembering your Twitter, where I think your pinned tweet is like, "Hey, folks, if you're sort of a new Marxist, is it fair to say, is it awful to assume you're Marxist-Leninist? That's cool, right?"
Oh, no, yeah. I'm definitely a Marxist-Leninist, yeah.
All right, so here we go. Suggested reading for new Marxists. Engels is Socialism, Utopian and Scientific, Wage, Labor, and Capital, Value, Price, and Profit by Marx. Yeah. We got this Lenin, State and Revolution. You love to see it. And the German Ideology. Okay, so there we go. Got some suggestions. And is it okay if I say, like, you're a young guy, right? I'm assuming you say this says 21. Are you 21? You're like a young guy.
Yeah, I'm pretty young. I'm 21 right now. Yeah.
All right. I'm like, I think I'm 37. I have to double check. Anyways, like it gets to a point where you lose count. Anyways, okay. So like, yeah, you're like a young guy. And for me, like, I'm like looking up to you and what you've read, because I'm still relatively new to not being a shit lib, relatively. I've come a long way in the past year. The pandemic has definitely radicalized me. It maybe helped accelerate the whole thing. So, right. Okay, so Michael, let's like circle. I got a question. What did your parents say when you got like the Communist Manifesto? What do you got this like tucked under your bed or something? Hilarious to me.
Yeah, it's just in my room. My mom didn't care that much. She was just like happy I was reading books. She didn't care what I was reading necessarily. She was kind of scared for me, of course, because like she's pretty aware of like how American society views Marxism and all of these things. But she was just like, hey, if you're reading, as long as you're not doing drugs, I guess this is cool. keep going, keep doing your thing.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, she was pretty. She was confused. She was like, "What?" But she let it rock. She let it rock.
All right. So, Michael, I found you on Twitter a couple years back because I was banned from my old account, and I'm sort of happy I did because I was following stupid people, like I said, probably more shit-lit people. And along the way, you start to realize, like, I don't know, you start to go, well, my analysis isn't good enough. You figured it out apparently much younger than I did, like decades. That's incredible to me. But so that's sort of a little bit about my journey, and what am I trying to say? I was going to get at something. I swear to God, I had a thought process. I had a thought train that just crashed and burned. But yeah. Here's what I want to get at. Okay. So I'm happy they banned my Twitter account because I had to make a new one, and I started following new people. And you were one of those people because I was like, I got good taste. And they got good takes, so this is a good match we got here. And I've just been like chilling, just watching your takes, liking them, retweeting them, and then finally I'm like, hey, this person's actually really cool. Let's get them on. So that's why we're here today. That's why I reached out, and that's sort of the basis behind that whole thing. So with that said, like, you are a little bit of a less known guest to me. I've had less research to be able to do, but this is fine. I still want to get to know you, and this actually gives us more to get to know. So, Michael, like, what would you say you're like most known for? Perhaps on Twitter or in the organizing work that you do.
Well, I think that's a big issue with some of the work I do is like I don't really talk about it that much. Like I try to keep it as low key as humanly possible. Okay. Like one thing I'm the most proud of, I would say, was I was working at a warehouse. I won't name it. A couple years back, and I helped organize the workplace to get a raise that they had been, talking about for a while. Yeah. And that made me feel like I was like 19. I was like, that made me feel incredible. I was like, wow,
that's king shit.
I got fired. Yeah, I got fired immediately after, but I did it, and they can't take that shit away from me. Yeah. $12 to $17 an hour. More paid time off. It was incredible. I just I wasn't in the position at the company where it's like they can't fire me. I was like a summer worker. I had only been there for like a few months, and they just they fired me saying I was harassing my coworkers or something like that. But that's probably what I'm the most proud of. Another thing would be being involved in the protests in DC in 2020 after the George Floyd execution. I never thought I'd see Americans like pop off the way they did on a national scale like that is. And of course there's a big difference between mobilization and organization, but even mobilization at that scale it's inspiring to anybody. And it was just cool to be out there with that energy again. I wish it was a little bit more cohesive, had a little bit more structure to it, and that's what we with the PSO we're doing out there, trying to kind of rally people around the specific cause of anti-imperialism, anti-capitalism. But that was beautiful too. But yeah, what I'm most known for, probably some viral tweets that ended up on like Reddit or something like that. All right. That's pretty much what I'm known for.
What was your, can you name one? Think of one. What's gone viral? I'm still waiting to hit it big on that twitter.com.
There's a lot of what?
Yeah.
Jesus, I'd have to look.
It's all good.
There's a few. I think there's one about like the Pentagon's budget in relation to the CDC and how like the Pentagon spends more in a week than like the CDC has an operating budget for an entire year or something like that.
Right.
And people are like, oh wow, that's absolutely insane.
It doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense, but it's necessary for an empire to keep its hegemony over the planet by continuing to pump money into the infrastructure, even if half of that money goes like directly to private contractors who just pocket it and send it to their shareholders. But yeah, I mean that this is the direction empire goes, towards the end, right? You just keep pumping more money into your military apparatus in in hopes that you can hold on to the power you've worked centuries to, collect, and it never really works out in the end. And all that happens is you suck more resources away from your citizens, and they become more and more disillusioned, and then something happens, they go kill somebody, they overthrow somebody, that's just the story of empire, and it's never failed in the history of human civilization, right?
Yeah. Regime change is their current move, right?
Oh, absolutely. And they're a lot smarter with it now than they were maybe 50, 60 years ago, under Operation Gladio, trying to just, airdrop neo-Nazi collaborators into Eastern European countries, watching them get killed. Now they have NGOs and, charities that go into countries, and civil society programs that are all about fostering democracy. And then, maybe they don't like who just got elected in office. He's talking about land reform too much. So maybe they pump a little bit more money into those NGOs, and then all of a sudden a revolution happens. You know what I mean? And it's a little easier to do it that way, or through like the IMF or UN sanctions, than it was to actually just drop troops into a country in South America or Africa to actually just wrestle control. But yeah, on the viral tweets thing, I there's a lot. I really don't know. And when they start to like blow up, I just mute it, because I feel like it's no longer something I said after it gets past a certain point, and just becomes like a piece of contention for the rest of Twitter to just fight each other on. And I'm not really bothered. I'm not really bothered to interact with that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, makes sense. Michael, here's the thing. I'd love to ask more about your organizing, but more tangentially, not like specifically, if that's cool. I'd love to just sort of like ask like how you got there. You gave us a couple different examples of some things that you've been working on, and but how do we get there? Like maybe like what events lead up to you organizing with the PSL? And I do want to ask more specifically about the PSL later and your involvement with them. And maybe this ties together, but maybe like what events, what people would you attribute to being most influential to you along your journey of organizing? Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. That's a great question.
Thank you.
I think one of the first people that really like inspired me was, I have a friend, Juan Nublo. He lives up here in Northern Virginia. We grew up together, been best friends for nearly a decade now. And he's a dreamer. So like he's lived in this country most of his life, but he doesn't have citizenship. And that bothered me, because I knew he had aspirations to do a lot of things that he would need citizenship to do. And it just didn't make sense to me how somebody who had, lived most of his life in this country could be rejected the opportunities like that any normal person here was. I mean, and this was when I was like, I only like thought this way because I was maybe in like 7th, 8th grade, like this, like I still had a slightly idealistic view on what liberal democracy was and what, it set out to, accomplish for people. So I was like, why? Well, why can't he be a citizen? It's cool, right? I thought this was all about freedom, liberty, and blah, 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 blah. So I think that's really what sparked my, interest in actually like getting involved in active political organizing. That's when I volunteered for the Bernie campaign for the first time. The host being, if we can get this sock dem in, maybe he can push through some immigration reform in a serious way, and then my friend can actually be a citizen of the country he's lived in for most of his life. Obviously, that didn't happen. The DNC has many different mechanics to stop somebody from being a candidate if they don't want it to happen. We saw it with Henry Wallace back in the 40s. We're seeing it now. Like people need to understand, the Democrats are not going to let any social democrat or democratic socialist ever, reach a true position of power inside the democratic establishment. Like they never have, they never will. There's been a progressive wing of the Democratic Party since the 20s, I believe, or 20s, 10s, you know what I mean? And, but anyway, that's how I got involved in the first place. That didn't work out. So past that, there was a few years there, especially during high school, where I just wasn't involved in any kind of communist organizing at all. I was studying a lot, I was reading a lot, but I hadn't really found an organization that really spoke to me in any real way at that point. And I'm a pretty introverted guy to begin with, so it's not like I was outside, talking to, hey, I'm a communist. Do you know any organizations that, blah, blah, blah. But I think I found the PSL freshman year of college.
Okay.
When I was just in DC, and I just saw them out, they were giving out pamphlets or whatever. And I was just interested. I just picked up a pamphlet, didn't really think about it, but
yeah,
I loved what they were talking about. Of course, people might disagree with this, but a vanguard party in a real sense in the US, and I wanted to be involved in it in whatever way I could. So I joined. I sent in my application. I had to send it in a couple times because they're kind of slow to respond.
Yeah. Let me pause you and ask, you say a vanguard organization. Maybe we got a viewer that doesn't even know what that means. How would you describe PSL to someone who's never heard of it, doesn't know what a vanguard organization is? Let's just start from the top.
So I would describe PSL as an anti-imperialist, anti-capitalist, socialist organization. They are looking to transform or transition away from a capitalist society into a socialist one. But they have a very different view on the situation than probably some other mass line groups. As a vanguard party, they believe that it should be a very small collective of dedicated communist organizers and agitators who work towards the ends of liberating the working class, and kind of takes the mantle of the working class to do so.
Let me dive down a little bit deeper. Maybe how would you describe the difference? How would you contrast or compare like a typical PSL person from a typical I'm sorry, what am I trying to say? DemSoc. What am I trying to say? The fucking the Democratic Socialists of America.
Right. Well, yeah, and I see where you're going, but we do not believe electoral politics is in any way a feasible methods of liberating the working class. We believe that electoral politics is the realm of capitalists. They mostly own it through their own funding and on both sides. So we believe that pressure needs to be applied on the capitalist system from outside rather from like within. Within a lot of these capitalist institutions, there are control mechanisms in place to stop any radical pushes from happening. And even if a radical party was to gain favor in Congress or whatever, they are still working to uphold a capitalist system since they are a body that was initially set up to manage the interests of the bourgeoisie and the capitalist class. We believe in setting up dual power, parallel institutions to actually challenge capitalist hegemony on our own basis with our own class interests, not trying to co-opt, bodies created by the capitalists to attack the capitalists. You can't, I've never understood that logic. How do you go into the master's house and think you're gonna own it? You're not gonna own it. And they probably have a lot of rooms with locks on the doors and you're not gonna get into those rooms. So why don't you go build your own house? Why don't you try to build your own house? Or why don't you get a bunch of people together outside the house and then you can maybe break down the doors. I don't know. But I think what we're seeing right now, especially, is that when you do try to go the other avenue, you do try to infiltrate Congress and infiltrate the Democratic Party, you just end up becoming controlled opposition. I mean, it's not unique to this time at all. We saw it during the establishment of the Second French Republic with, some socialist politicians who thought they could do the same thing. They could get into the interim government and they could make something happen. You know what I mean? And slowly but surely, the liberal and conservative forces inside the Second French Republic were like, well, let's get these guys out of here because they're an actual threat to, you know, the material security of the system we're trying to create. Because at the end of the day, people need to understand representative democracy was never started as a popular government. It was never meant to be a popular government. James Madison even talks about it in the Federalist Papers that the priority of liberal democracy should be first and foremost the management of private interests, first and foremost, and that it should not let the rabble of the public dictate too much of what happens in the country. So, I mean, you're looking at a system that will never, ever, ever fold to the needs of the working class. It can't. The state in a capitalist society is meant to, you know, reconcile class antagonisms to, you know, the best ability it can. It fails most of the time, but that's what it's meant to do. So yeah, we do not believe that we should be fighting for congressional seats or fighting for local office seats. We believe we should be organizing the working class from without and apply pressure from without. But yeah, that's what the PSL is focused on. I feel like that's what any principled socialist should believe. There's obviously like some propaganda uses to, you know, electoral politics, but outside of that, really looking at it as a primary means of challenging capitalist hegemony is pretty naive, in my opinion, and ahistorical.
As in history, if one looks into it over and over and over again, they'll find examples of people trying electoral reforms to, you know, I guess violently capitalistic, you know, neoliberal institutions, economies, and they always get clapped back.
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's what I'm finding. Now, let's keep going down this road. I'm loving talking about PSL. And what do you think people get wrong about it? We can sort of ignore that, you know, the far right, their complaints about it. But what does the left get wrong about what PSL does?
What does the left get wrong? A lot, but I really don't want to focus on too many of those criticisms, to be completely honest, because I feel like a lot of them are in bad faith.
All right.
I just don't think people know enough about it. I don't think people have looked into it enough to truly understand it outside of maybe some of the grievances people on social media might have with it. What I can tell you is that it is an organization that is continuously trying to improve itself, continuously trying to, I mean, that's the point of all communist organizing. You know, you try to improve. That's the point. You know, you don't abandon an organization as soon as things get hard or a little bit problematic. You try to work through the issues. And that's what we're always trying to do inside of the PSL. So people might not want to give it a chance. People might have serious ideological, you know, concerns with revolutionary vanguardism or Bolshevism or Marxist-Leninism, you know, at all. And that's one thing. But I believe the PSL is a great organization that's doing great work around the world, especially around the US, the direct action in all 50 states, you know, lobbying for the rights of people in prison and people who have been falsely accused, constantly showing solidarity and support for workers and for protesters, and constantly trying to help in the community, constantly giving out food, helping, supplying people in need. They're trying. That's all I can say. They're trying. And I feel like most people, if you don't agree with the PSL, that's fine, but just, you have to do something. You have to do something. You have to engage somehow, because that's what we need. I feel like it's our responsibility. I think it's our generation's responsibility specifically to push back against the powers that be, because I don't feel like there's much time left before we kind of transition into a much more brutal, either neo-feudal or radically fascist society, and I think it's the work of leftists to push back against it. So you might not agree with the PSL, and that's completely fine, but I just hope you're doing something. I hope you're organizing in some way. So, yeah.
I mean, for me, where I'm coming from, like, I'm a DSA guy, but I don't know.
Yeah.
There's some shit going down. You hear about the drama, the fucking Palestine drama?
Yeah, the BDS, that was pretty disappointing.
Hit me with your take, yeah. I mean, we can give a balanced, fair take. I mean, we're not here to talk shit about DSA. At the same time, I'm thinking about leaving. I'm thinking about joining PSL.
Right.
That's just the honest truth over here.
And I think the issue with organizations like DSA is that when you are trying to become a mainstream party, you have to make certain concessions on your principle, right? And I think that's what happened with the whole BDN situation, which is they want to become a more widely accepted political party, but to do that, they have to concede some points on the anti-imperialism front, right? So that's what they had to do. And again, it's an eventuality for an organization like that. You see what's happened to the Labor Party over the past 100 or so years. It's pretty much a center-left party at this point, when it started off much more radical than it is now. And it was disappointing, but not surprising. I've kind of seen the direction the DSA was going for a long time and was not a big fan of it. Some of their, AOC, Jamal Brown, I don't have much faith in that approach. And it bothers me. And again, BDS is not like a very extreme position to take. I feel like it's a very baseline, you support human rights. Yeah. No apartheid state. If we can't agree on that point, then I don't know how you can really call yourself a socialist or even a democratic socialist organization. It's pretty insane to me. But yeah, I was disappointed but not surprised. Again, this is the direction a lot of these democratic socialist soft dem organizations have to go through. You have to become socially chauvinist in a way to remain viable in a country whose like material wealth is tied up in the exploitation of the global South. Like you have to be okay with it, or you have to turn a blind eye to it. It's a necessity, right? I live in Northern Virginia, where everybody you look around and somebody's either in the military, somebody's a military contractor, somebody works for the State Department. Like these are all people whose material health is tied up directly with the success of an expansionist, violent American empire. Like that's how they make their money, right? And I think there's a big labor, like aristocratic base in this country that has been paid to not care, or to be in support of, U.S. imperialism. And I don't think it's a smart strategy for leftists in any kind of sense to try to appeal to a super wide base, hoping that, you can become more popular when that's the ideological bent to a lot of people in the U.S. So, yeah, that's my whole.
Yeah.
I don't like the DSA. I don't like the DSA. I think there's a lot of good people inside of the DSA, and I feel for them, and I feel for them in this situation definitely. But I think their leadership has failed them here.
Circling back to why you joined PSL, you mentioned sort of electoralism, if I can rephrase my words, and stop me if I'm wrong, but being a waste of time, revolutionary energy, being a waste of revolutionary energy and time. You mentioned, dual power and anti-imperialism. How would you compare or contrast the reasons with which you joined the group with the reasons that you're staying in the group? Are they the same? Have they evolved?
I think I think they've evolved in some places. I think they could do better in a lot more places, especially when it comes to how they treat their members. And but I'd say they've the sections where they've evolved is just how involved they are with the community, how much more engaged they've been in the community, especially in the past couple of years. We've seen membership skyrocket in the last couple of years, and that's because of a very concerted effort by the PSL to, focus in on outreach. And I think that's a very positive improvement. And I think they've done that without conceding their base Marxist-Leninist principles, which is, I believe, is very impressive, because most times when political organizations try to, widen their base, like with the DSA, they make certain concessions, but the PSL has not made any concessions of the sort. And I think that's very impressive. So that's where I think we've definitely improved in the last couple of years, just outreach, getting the name out, getting the word out about, what the PSL is, what you can do to join. There's a robust education program tied to the PSL as well for new members. So again, I think it would be beneficial for anybody to just go check it out. Just go check it out. See if it's for you. If it's not, then it's not. If it is, then do it. But imperialism is such a violent force on the world. I don't think people truly understand how important it is to push back on it, right? Like, what modern imperialism really is a fusion of, early 20th century American liberal democracy and, the Nazi Germany elements that survived after the war. We were able to inject a lot of those elements into some of the biggest institutions on earth. For a while, the chairman of NATO was a former Nazi, and Adolf Hitler. And you go down the line in the UN and NASA and a lot of our top science departments, we've injected Nazism into our society, into our operating philosophy. It's a big reason why we've shifted gears so much towards privatization. Privatization was a policy that was minted by Nazi Germany, and we took it and expanded upon it. And modern imperialism really is a fusion of American liberal democracy and fascism in a very concerted way. I think the two need each other. I think fascism is capitalism in decline. Fascism is capitalism trying to hold on at the very end, similar to how feudalism tried to hold on at the very end with absolute monarchy, the same way the Roman Republic turned into the Roman Empire. This is like a consolidation of capital. Again, just trying to hold on at the very end. So it's one, a signal of death, but two, a signal of, how much more dangerous this entity has become. A bear on the brink of death is much more dangerous than a bear. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really. I was watching a video yesterday talking about how everything's just a vibration, and I'm just vibing over here, like loving what you're saying, and I'm thinking about, what was I thinking about? I was thinking about, how you were saying it's important. Really, really, really good point here. You said it's important to push back against modern imperialism, and you know that because there are so few people doing it, and when you do it, you get called all sorts of weird names, even these days. I'm trying to push back against, what I find to be the worst forms of capitalism. If you can imagine, like, the dragon somehow getting fucking even worse. We've got the neoliberalism. You know what I mean? I hate that shit. And then we got that whole neo-colonialism. It's always neo. What are we in the Matrix over here? Anyways, that's not a good joke. Don't encourage this. But stop laughing. No. But what was I gonna get at? It's like we're living, honestly, in the worst form of capitalism, and it just makes it all that much more important to like, I think, say something about it, like stand up and say something about it, and and maybe do a little bit of reading or like listening to people who have better analysis than you. And that's what I try to do. And that's why I've learned about things like, neocolonialism and neoliberalism in the past 2 years. I've literally had to like look it up and listen to people who know things more than me. So one of the things that I've learned recently is that like, if you try to look at the situation is it cool if we dig into the Ukraine-Russia thing? I think people are still wanting to talk about it in chat.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Some will say what Russia is doing is an imperialism, and I'm sure they're probably doing war crimes. I'm sure anyone involved in war is doing war crimes. I mean, the United States, we're giving arms to Nazis, so we could talk about war crimes all day. And of course, we're doing war crimes in Afghanistan. We're starving millions of people. I can go on and on and on. It's so wild to see President Joe Brandon call fucking Putin a fucking war criminal. It's like, wow, it takes one to know one. Spider-Man pointing meme. Am I right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So for me, it helped to have someone with better analysis than me explain to me the difference between imperialism and what the United States is doing in Ukraine, which is, sort of more of a form of like neocolonialism. We're going to do the IMF loans to them. We're gonna saddle them with World Bank, Bretton Woods shit, and they're gonna be under the West's thumb, and somehow we've convinced them that that's what they want. I mean, fuck the EU, am I right? Victoria Nuland, high five. Anyways,
that's the one thing I agree with her with. Fuck the EU. Fuck
oh man, it's like when that guy is the worst person you know. When you agree with the worst person you know, right? Okay.
Absolutely.
So fuck Victoria Nuland. I do wonder what kind of cookies she was handing out. I bet they were tasty.
Mint Milano.
Nice. I love a Milano. Let's fucking go. Okay, so what let's dig in. Do you have like a Ukraine Russia take? What's on your mind? What are people still getting wrong? What do they need to get right? What's on your mind?
Well, here's the first issue. I feel like for most people, this entire thing started one day when Putin woke up and said, "Okay, I'm going to invade Ukraine today."
He woke up and chose violence.
He just woke up and chose violence. When in reality, the tensions, but like in this region, have been building since the collapse of the Soviet Union, since those referendums and a lot of the satellite Soviet states happened. I mean, there's been referendums in Eastern Ukraine and Crimea since the early 90s to stay with Russia. You know what I mean? And one of the main points of contention for the Berlin Wall coming down was that the U.S. had to agree not to expand NATO eastward anymore, right? To act as a buffer.
Not one more inch.
Right. And of course, NATO ignored that completely and kept expanding east for the decades past. And I think that's very important to note because people need to understand the US and the West wanted this to happen. They wanted this reaction. Russia is the main supplier of energy to Europe, right? If you're able to cut Russia off from the European energy market, then somebody else can come in and fill that space. And you also get to isolate a rising Russia, right? Like this is not rocket science. The US sees a competitor and wanted to cut them out. They saw another rising power and wanted to cut them out. That's what big powers do. This is what big capitalist powers do. And Ukraine has been a region that has been going back and forth depending on, who the oligarchs in the country support for a very long time, for decades now. They're for a few years they're pro-Russian, for a few years they're pro-Western, flip-flop, back and forth. And we're in the middle of that. This is a proxy war. This is not, the Ukraine acting on its own to push back against, Russian expansionism. It just isn't. Even if we look back at Euromaidan, right? The only reason that revolution happens is because NGOs that we funded through the NED and USAID were able to spark the protests in the first place, right? So obviously we knew what we were doing, putting Poroshenko and his cronies into power. And we knew we were doing by not allowing the Minsk agreements back in 2014 to stand, allowing the ceasefires to stand, allowing at least some kind of autonomous regions in eastern Ukraine, and no longer making Crimea this thing that the Western media kept harping on, and not continuously saying for the past year that Russia was going to invade. They've been saying it for a long time, even before real Russia buildup has started. You know what I mean? So obviously, the U.S. knows what they were doing here, and this is not the first time the U.S. has thrown rocks and hid their hands. We do this everywhere. We fund opposition groups in every single country. We don't directly involve ourselves in. We get the OAS to say that Bolivian elections are, invalid, and then poof, there's a right-wing dictator in power. You know what I mean? We did it in Libya, we did it in Iraq, did it in Afghanistan. This is how we operate. This is how we expand. I think it's incredible to me that people can't see what the U.S. is doing here when they've done it all over the world.
I know,
for damn near a century now.
I know. It's the same move.
It's the same move. It's
you
like
guys. They're arming the far right. It's like they do it every fucking time, like literal Nazis. I don't even like to say neo-Nazis with these guys.
Back
in the Matrix.
Even Israel is giving them to war rifles to use.
Can you believe it? Those fucking Uzis.
Like, come on, man. Like, yeah. And again, this goes back. This has historical precedence. Mm-hmm. Again, Operation Gladio was a program launched by NATO, right, to push back against communist forces throughout Europe after the end of World War II, right? They saw Europe after the collapse of Nazi Germany, and it was decimated. It was a blank canvas, right? So there was two paths that could go down. Either these communists who were still armed, who were doing real resistance against the Nazis at the time, were going to take power because they were organized and they had the sympathies of the public, or the U.S. was going to step in that void. And what did they use? They used the same Nazi collaborators, right, that were working with Nazi Germany to maintain control and to set up NATO and to expand NATO. And that's what we've done forever. And we're doing it here again. This is not a hidden history. You know what I mean? The history of these, international organizations is not hidden, right? The Atlantic Council was talking about maybe 2 years ago how we needed to isolate Russia. We needed to do something to isolate Russia. Mm-hmm. Because we needed to stop the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, which is a pipeline, if people don't know, that connects Russia directly to Germany, which would have skyrocketed the energy exports to the European market, further entwining the European economy with the Russian economy, making it damn near it would have been suicide at that point to try to isolate Russia from Europe. And they did it anyway. And you see what's happening. Russia is not faring well. Energy prices are going through the roof. They did not want this conflict. This is a battle between the US and Russia. And it's not even it's not only not necessary, but it only helps, energy oligarchs in the US, energy oligarchs in Ukraine, and it hurts everybody else. There are innocent people in Ukraine dying right now in a conflict they had no intention of being a part of. You know what I mean? This is why people think like everybody in Ukraine is for NATO membership. They understand what NATO membership actually means, right? And it's agitating tensions. And that's not what they want, because they didn't want a war like this to happen. But they forced this issue, and now it's at their doorstep. And now they have to deal with this proxy battle between two of the biggest countries on earth on their front doorstep, a country that's already been completely deindustrialized, with the help of the IMF and World Bank going in and privatizing all the farmland and tearing down factories and tearing down industry and sinking the GDP and sinking their wages and forcing people to leave the country just to go find a proper, like a half decent wage somewhere else in Europe or in the US or Canada. Like it's terrible what's happened to these fucking people. Like it's insane. And again, the fact that so many so many in the American. I mean, think about this. Maybe 8 months ago, people were putting out op-eds about how we let Afghanistan happen. How did this happen? How did we let this happen?
They didn't learn. They never looked it up. Yeah, they never figured out why it happened. So otherwise, they would see the same move.
Yeah. A year later, they're calling for a fucking no-fly zone. They're calling for nuclear war. Like it's the same.
Idiots.
It's like it's like a magician explains to you a magic trick, and then you see the magic trick again, and then you go, "Wow, how did you do that?" They just told you how they did that. Yeah. Do you not listen, or do you choose not to hear?
Yo, history is like an open book a lot of time, folks. You can go and figure it out. Yeah, there's a lot of secrets that you can't figure out, but like sometimes you can. This is one of those times where you can look up what happened in Afghanistan. You won't get the entire picture, but you'll learn the broad strokes, and you'll see it happening again in Ukraine. It doesn't repeat. History doesn't repeat, but as they say it certainly rhymes.
It definitely rhymes. And I think another funny aspect of this, and I think this is a more important and more like nefarious point, right? Like the American public has reacted to this very differently than maybe how the U.S. acted in Libya, turning the country into a failed state with open slave markets and no central authority and no real functioning infrastructure, right? And I think the difference there is a part of the American ethos is that everything we do is benevolent. Everything somebody else does is nefarious. Everything somebody else does is malicious. When really you're just seeing a reflection of the American empire on a country in Russia that was forged by the American empire during the 90s. Yeltsin and his administration created the Russian economy based off of suggestions from fucking Harvard economist Larry Summers and his fucking goons who went over there to help privatize the entire country and create the oligarchy that we see today. Right? So you're seeing a country that was formed in the image of the US. And in that reflection, people see a malicious actor when they should be looking back at themselves like, what did we do to create this issue? We never take that step back to see what we did to create an issue, right? Libya was one of the highest, had one of the highest GDPs in all of Africa. It had some of the best living conditions in all of Africa.
Mm-hmm.
After the NATO intervention, it is, I can only describe it as hell. It's what we did to that country is unconscionable. It's ridiculous, but nobody views these two events as the same thing. And it's because the American psyche is tied up with seeing everything the US does, which again is all at the behest of capitalists and their profits, as wholly and completely benevolent. And it's ridiculous. And people need to go look in the mirror or read a fucking book about US history in South America or what they're doing in Africa right now. Bombing Somalia. They're sending fucking special ops into the Horn of Africa to just murder random fucking people. You know what I mean?
AFRICOM?
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm sorry.
No, keep going.
No, it's awesome. You're hitting all the good spots there. Incredible. Here's the thing, Michael. I try to respect my guests' time, and we're coming up on the hour here. I just want to give you the heads up that we maybe about 5 more minutes, and feel free to drop out. I'm enjoying the chat for sure. We hit on a bunch of points there, and I could go a bunch of different directions, and everything you said was absolutely true, and we got some people coping in chat. It's hilarious. You love to see it. Thanks for the engagement, y'all. But where do I go from here? Let's try to end on a positive note. What W's? If we could take a little shift here in our chat, like what W's should the left be, sort of making note of these days? Of course, we've seen Amazon. If you want to talk about that, we can do that. Yesterday looked like Chris Smalls took a little victory lap. It was you love to see it. What W's should we be looking out for, or should we have known about already? What do you think, Michael?
I think we are seeing the start of a new labor movement popping up in the U.S., and I think it's been well overdue, especially since 2008. What happened in 2008, and I think that was a catalyst for a lot of what's been happening. Again, wages have been stagnant for the past maybe 50 years. Living conditions have dropped, debt has risen, labor participation has dropped. We were due for something like this to happen. Enough of these contradictions pile up, it's bound to boil over. I think that's what we're seeing. And I think we have the potential here right now for some real radical action and some real mass radicalization to occur. And it's making capitalists nervous. You saw Howard Schultz yesterday freaking the fuck out.
Yeah.
And that's beautiful to see.
I hate that guy.
I hate him so much.
He's one of the worst.
He sucks so much. But I think it's beautiful that he's so nervous, right? We have to keep making capitalists nervous, and this is how we do it. They don't care who you vote for, but if you start talking about unionization, they get very scared because now you're fucking with their bottom line in a really serious way. So I think that's it. That's one positive. I think we're seeing the start of a very powerful labor movement that I don't think is going to stop anytime soon, because I don't think the U.S. government has the intentions of pushing back against, the degradation of working class living conditions. I don't think they care too much anymore. I just hope we go a different path than maybe the CPUSA and the Socialist Party of America did, co-opting the New Deal during the 40s. But again, positive. 2, we're seeing the rise of a lot of left-wing parties across the entire global South.
Yeah.
I think that's beautiful as well. And a lot of those same countries are drawing closer ties with China that kind of puts them outside of the bubble of U.S. hegemony, which I think is powerful and very important if they are to, continue to progress into more left-wing countries. The U.S. empire is slowly but surely waning. I don't think it's 15 years away from collapse the way some people say, but we are definitely on the tail end of what this empire can achieve. And people just need to stay positive, stay optimistic, continue to agitate, continue to organize, because this ship is going down. I swear to God, this ship is going down, and we need to help it go down. Because this is probably the most evil, one of the most evil powers to have ever existed in human history. So we got to keep working. But yeah, we're seeing a lot. I mean, Jesus, again, 2 years ago, I never would have thought I would see so many people out on the streets fighting the way they did. And we're already seeing, unions unions in New York popping up, unions for Starbucks, Amazon, in Richmond, culinary workers are starting to organize in a more serious way. Retail workers in Richmond, Virginia are starting to organize. I think we're in a good spot, man. We just got to keep our principles in mind and not try to, go down any opportunist lines and try to, collaborate with some of these actors. But yeah, I'm really hopeful. I'm not a doomer the way a lot of people are. I think there's a lot of hope and optimism apparent right now. Yeah.
Yeah, would be great to get back to the place where, probably about 100 years ago at this point, where the union membership was much stronger. So in that sense, let's make America great again.
Let's make America great again, guys.
Gosh,
Okay.
I hate myself for saying that. Welcome in. Okay, thanks for the raid. We got a raid just a moment ago. Nonsense Password. Thanks for the raid. Everyone give Nonsense Password a follow. So before we leave, I want to ask you just a couple more questions. One question is sort of taken care of by your Twitter, and the question is, do you have any resources to recommend to me and my audience? And I think all 4 of them in your pinned tweet would be great, as we mentioned earlier. So, and at that point, I just got one last question for you. And then before I say this, I do want to say, I've really enjoyed talking, Michael. You would be a wonderful guest to have back on another time. I just enjoy the chat, and I think it would be great to go into even more depth and learn more about you and what you're up to. Okay, so one more thing here. This is the show Leftist and Chill. How do you stay leftist and chill? How do you chill? How do you chill out?
Ooh, how do I chill out? I've been playing Elden Ring.
Yeah.
Recently.
That is not a chill game. That looks stressful as fuck.
It is,
yeah. But
if you've played From Software games enough over the years, it becomes the pain becomes soothing, right?
I respect this.
Absolutely.
Nice.
I've been watching a lot of Akira Kurosawa films, a lot of Andrei Tarkovsky. I watch a lot of let's say fucking pretentious movies for pretentious people. So me and Leftist and Chill, to me, I'm pretty chill just as a baseline.
Yeah. That's cool.
But I've been sober for a year now, so I've had to find like different outlets to chill through, and movies, my books, all my theory, that's stacked up in my room. That's how I chill for the most part, and I mostly chill with my cat because she's awesome, even though she tries to eat me. Yeah.
What's your cat's name?
Nala, like from Lion King.
Oh yeah,
right.
Love it. Right. Well, Michael, this has been a lot of fun. Next time you'll have to show cat. That's how this works. Now that we know. But again, thank you for dropping by. Thank you for telling us your story and for talking about your story and about PSL and the work that you've done. Maybe before we let you go, can you let us know where we can follow you and support you and also your organization?
Well, you can follow me at Mike Kofi A on Twitter, Instagram. I would suggest you don't, because I'm a kind of an idiot, and I'm gonna make you mad at some point. I've made a lot of people follow me mad.
Oh my gosh.
I'm still surprised I'm at that many. I'm looking at how many followers I have right now, and it looks ridiculous. You can follow me there. You can go to psl.org to go check it out. Check out the people. I know there's a lot of people in chat right now who are probably like, have there been a lot of people in chat just super angry with me right now?
It's just like one person who's not vibing. Usually, this is like a non-debate space, so people don't usually get off on like disagreeing with me because I don't give them the energy that they want. They want weird energy. They want to argue with someone on the internet. Anyway, I don't take it personally, so I don't reply to them, and so they leave. It's great.
When I started getting more aware of Twitch again, it was like people kept sending me this guy Vouch. Like, I didn't know who this guy was. I was like, why? Who is this? And they're like, look what he said. And I'm like, I don't. Who is this?
Sorry.
And from what I've seen, he's just like he's a neckbeard. Who's like, he calls himself an anarcho syndicalist, but he sounds like he's just a liberal. Like he sounds like he votes for whoever he needs to vote for. Like I don't understand how he's considered I don't know. These people confuse me. All this debate stuff, like Destiny, Vouch. People send me these people. I don't know what they're up to. I don't know what they do, but I just don't Stop debating. Everyone stop debating. No one needs to debate anymore. I don't care. Please stop.
You heard it here. Michael Andoh, what a guest. Please clap. Thank you so much, Michael, for coming by. We're going to wrap it up right there. That's a perfect spot. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you again soon, okay, bud? Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
All right, peace. Solidarity. All right. Loved it. Michael Andoh, please like, subscribe, and comment. Support on Patreon. Love it. All right, Michael, take care, bud.